So are you looking for Canadian flags when you're doing your shopping these days? People are trying to use their money as action against U.S. President Donald Trump. They value Canada and Canadian goods, and their shopping habits are starting to reflect that. So today on the show, how can you truly buy Canadian? Could boycotting American products backfire and actually hurt Canadian jobs? And can you buy Canadian on a budget? Lots of questions, and we have a lineup of guests with some interesting answers. We also want to hear from you today. Are you changing your shopping habits in hopes of sending a message to President Trump? Give us a call today, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. The CBC comedy show this hour has 22 minutes sure made me laugh this week. It recently had a sketch that has resonated with millions and millions of people. If you haven't seen it, I'll set the scene. Two men pushing shopping carts run into each other in the aisle of a grocery store.
What the hell are you doing?
What?
That's Heinz ketchup.
So?
It's American. Buy French's. It's Canadian. We're in a trade war, you traitor.
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Mrs. Butterworth? You were going to buy American maple syrup?
Oh. Okay, that costs way more.
So does freedom. What the hell is that?
My Timmy's. What? Timmy's is Canadian.
Not anymore. It's Brazilian now. Buy second cup.
Oof. Maybe we just don't buy coffee for a while.
That's fair.
Okay, what restaurant chains are safe?
Boston Pizza, New York Fries. Basically, if there's an American city in the name, it's probably Canadian. Cheetos?
No.
Hawkins.
I like my cheesies soft.
War is no time for soft cheesies.
Not my Charmin. Look, I need that. I'm sensitive.
This is like wiping your arse with the Charter of Rights. Try Royale. If it sounds English or French, it's probably Canadian. What else is on your list?
Chips?
Hickory sticks.
Orange juice?
Clamato juice.
Old El Paso taco kit?
Kraft dinner.
Frosted Flakes?
Kraft dinner.
And Kraft dinner.
2 boxes of Kraft dinner.
I thought Kraft was owned by Heinz.
Yeah, but KD is made in Canada. Ketchup bad, cheesy does good. What do you drink?
Jack Daniels?
Crown Royal.
Right, because if it sounds English or French,
It's probably Canadian.
Right.
Welcome to the fight, soldier.
We all have to do our part. There's only one winner in a trade war.
That'll be $312.32.
I'm going to have to put everything but the KD back.
Loblaws. Either way, we win.
So that was a sketch from the CBC comedy show. This hour has 22 minutes. The sketch has resonated with Canadians and has been seen tens of millions of times. So, pretty funny ending there. How much more does it cost to buy Canadian? Prices are something our next guest plays close attention to. Riza Ocampo goes by the name Coupon Bay on social media. The Regina woman recently met up with our CBC Saskatchewan social team. She had $25 to spend on Canadian groceries. You can see the video on our CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel. But Riza, Coupon Bay, joins us right now. Hi, Riza.
Hi.
So that was kind of a fun task to have. $25. You go to the grocery store. What'd you learn?
Absolutely. And it was kind of last minute too, but I'm glad that I did have the Flip app, which is available to anyone who just downloads it. And you can easily just plan a haul before visiting the store. And then it's really hard to read labels on the app itself because it just really shows you sometimes the prices. But when you're actually at the store, you can actually look more into the labels to see which is a product of Canada and what's made in Canada.
Okay, I need to back up a bit. I'm not using the Flip app. What is the Flip app?
Okay, so the Flip app, which is a double P, Flip, it's an app where you can browse digital flyers and you can enter your zip code or postal code. And so it's customized to your area and you can see prices throughout the whole Regina or Saskatoon or wherever you are, whatever postal code you put in, you can see all the flyers from all the stores. So you can plan ahead of time what you're buying.
Okay, so you put your grocery list into that, but then what store did you go to?
At that time, the store that allowed us to have the video was your independent grocer, Neil's Independent. So I find them a little bit more pricier than the regular Superstore because at Superstore you're able to add match. But surprisingly, I I went over $4. It was 29 at the end there, but that's because we initially planned to go to Real Canadian Superstore and ended up moving to independent grocer, but still, it's still pretty good.
Okay. So when you've been out shopping, not just at independent, but other stores these days, are you noticing that stores are trying to make it easier for customers who want to be buying products of Canada right now?
I have actually. So a lot of the stores at this time are posting on social media, on their social media pages. They're pushing and posting pictures of products that are made in Canada. So when you're actually just at home browsing, you're able to already see what they're advertising that's made or like made in Canada or is a product of Canada. Unlike before, you wouldn't really see those. You would just see, oh, this is on sale this week. This is what's the deal this week. But stores are more like, okay, this is a product of Canada and buy this. So that helps as well.
And once you're in the store, did you find it difficult to figure out the origin story of the products you were trying to buy?
I think just being more mindfulness, because really I wouldn't read it. I wouldn't normally read it. I read the price. That's what I read. But now I'm just like, where is this made? And then you would see, okay, it's always going to be written on the product itself, or for some produce, it's going to be written on the price that's on the shelf. So
and
just maybe closer attention.
Were you just trying to avoid American products, or were you truly trying to buy Canadian?
So at that time, we wanted to discover if it was expensive to buy Canadian. So I was only looking for Canadian products. So I was avoiding other ones at the time and trying to stay within that budget.
And what did you learn? Is it more expensive to buy Canadian?
So what I did learn, which was surprising, is I was actually already buying products that were Canadian in regards to those groceries. And this is because I felt like, oh, well, B-Cell, it's Canadian. And I've been buying it because B-Cell puts out good coupons throughout the year. They have a Checkout 51 cashback offer. They have other points promotions through the year. So it's like, oh, okay. And then I look at the carrots that I've been buying, which is a 3-pound bag. That's Farmer's Market. Those ones typically go on sale for $1.97 throughout the year as well. I'm just surprised that I have been buying Canadian after all.
So have people been reaching out to you because you are known as an expert on saving a few bucks when you're grocery shopping, and then there is this movement to try to buy Canadian. Are people looking to you for tips?
Well, yes, because I had shared on social media the video that was made, and a lot of people didn't know about PC Optimum app and how like you can download digital coupons when you're at the store. And a lot of PC Optimum, like their points offers are actually on a lot of Canadian products as well. Like the Daia was a Canadian company, and at that shop that was filmed for CBC, I had purchased that, and that had a points offer and a cashback offer on Checkout 51, and those are Canadian products. So yeah.
So did you end up not being able to buy something because you couldn't find a Canadian version of it? Like, for example, this week I didn't get my kale because I couldn't find anything that wasn't American.
Oh, I didn't really look into kale at that time, so I'm not 100% sure.
But did you find yourself avoiding anything? Like, could you not get any item in the grocery store because you couldn't find a Canadian version of it?
Like, that would be a hard question. But for example, like romaine lettuce, that was like I would always buy the product of like America before, a product of USA, and then I noticed, oh well, there's another brand you can buy, and it's a product of Canada. So then you can, like, if you would like to support that, instead you would buy the Canadian one. But if there's no alternative and you would need the item, then I guess you got to close your eyes.
Or I ended up with spinach, second best.
Okay. Completely different one. Same thing, I guess.
So just before we let you go, Riza, what tips do you have for people who want to buy local, they want to buy Canadian, but they're on a tight budget?
I would highly recommend the Flip app and shop at stores that do allow ad matching, because your typical grocery store will have typical, like your grocery list will have typical items that you need for your whole week. So when you're able to ad match, which is showing the cashier a cheaper price, you'll be able to save money on your groceries. Little by little, you'll get better at it. Like you can save up to 50% on your bill if you're able to find cheaper prices through your city. That's one I highly recommend to download. And then little by little, you can get into the PC Optimum app, loyalty rewards, coupon, cash back, like step by step.
I like all these hot tips. Riza, so good to have you on the show today. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is Riza Ocampo. She goes by the name Coupon Bay on social media. Do check out her fun social media video that she did with our team here at CBC Saskatchewan. You can find it on our YouTube channel. Riza knows a good deal. So if you have questions that you are looking for some answers as you're trying to shop and buy local, Colleen Wiseman will likely know the answer. She knows food and supply chains really well. She's a UBC professor in food economics and academic director of the Master of Food Resource and Economics program, but she's also a University of Saskatchewan grad who grew up in Theodore. So let's give her a warm Saskatchewan welcome. Hello, Colleen.
Hello. Yes, the big city of Theodore. Oh, wait, no, just a tiny town, but a great place to grow up in.
Well, and it's great to have you on Blue Sky today. So you were just listening to Riza, who was trying to find some deals as she was also looking for Canadian products. I just want to start by asking you what you make of this surge of support we're seeing for Canadian products.
I mean, somebody who's really involved in the world of sort of food processing and food and agriculture, I think it's great. I think it's great that we're showing this kind of support. I think it's great that we're also willing to put in the work to say, okay, if, what does it mean? Is it Canadian? Is it not? So I think it's good for consumers in the sense that they're, providing that support and patriotism. It's a way of, we call it shopping with your grocery cart, right? That's, you can make those differences, but it's also great for the people who are providing the products, so the food processors, getting that opportunity within there. I think it's a really positive element in a very difficult and challenging time.
Mm-hmm. We have you until 1 o'clock today. So, Colleen, I've got lots of questions for you, and I know our listeners do as well. But I just want you to explain for us the different labels that we're looking for right now, because the example I've talked about, peanut butter, the peanuts do not come from Canada, but it's a made in Canada product. So maybe just help people understand what it is they should be looking for and the differences.
Absolutely. So I think it goes really well with what Riza was saying, because Riza was all about the affordability, which is an important part that everyone is thinking of. It doesn't matter what their socioeconomics are. So put that together with okay, now I'm, in there with my shopping cart. What am I looking for? So Canadian Food Inspection Agency, they're the people who are the ones that regulate this, put the rules out there. They have really two phrases that you need to be looking for. The first one is called Product of Canada. The other one is Made in Canada. So Product of Canada is very important. What that means is that in terms of the actual place itself, 98%, so the biggest amount of it, primary ingredients, the processing, and the labor are all Canadian. So when you see that, you say, okay, so that's an important element of it. Those are what we call these direct manufacturing costs. Okay, so then you go along and you say, oh, but wait a minute, this one says made in Canada. Is that different? Are they trying to trick me? Well, no, it's just a different type of category that Canadian Food Inspection Agency provides. In that case, it's a different percentage. It's 51%. So what that means is that it's 15% or up to that 98, because then you trigger into the other one. And in that case, that's the one where the processing, the labor, it could be in Canada, but the ingredients could be somewhere else. So the classic example is the cookie, right? The flour, the sugar, everything like that is foreign ingredients, but it's made in Canada. That can be seen as made in Canada because you're still supporting, it's still the largest amount in terms of 51% or more is still the Canadian one.
Because I think a lot of people are looking at, you've got a third category. Okay, I'll hold off on my questions until you tell us that.
No, it's just the third category is the ones where we see these odd things, like as in, processed in or baked in or partial in. Those are not CFIA ones. They're people who are doing it either for marketing or for information, and it doesn't have any of those categories. So you're really looking for product of and made in Canada.
Okay, so if people are trying to shop to send a message to Donald Trump and they're worried about the economic impact of tariffs, how do you spend your money accordingly? And I maybe we could use a Cheerios example. I think oats. Let's say the oats come from Saskatchewan. I think they might, but the company is not Canadian based, but the manufacturing might happen in Ontario. So as people are making choices, are we worried about where the ingredients come from or the number of jobs affected?
Right. And so that has to do with the priorities, right? So I'm a person that says, you know what, as long as it's not from the US, I'm good with it. So then I'm shopping Mexico, and then I'm shopping Peru, whatever, those things. However, if you're a person who says, I'm Canadian jobs, then you're going for that idea of the made in Canada, and you're looking at companies like, say, the Cheerios, who has a plant in here, or Dare Cookies. They're a beautiful example, right? They're a Canadian brand, but they have products that are processed here in Richmond, here in Vancouver, just out of there. In Ontario, they have a couple of plants, but other ones. So the ingredients are not maybe Canadian, but the labor is. So you're still supporting Canada and Canada jobs. So I think what happens is it really comes back to you in terms of what your priorities are. You can go very pure and say, no, I just want to do product of Canada. That's the 98%. Or you could look at the made in Canada. The tough part is these companies such as Cheerios, such as Heinz, such as these other ones that are products that are, say, Canadian brands but manufactured somewhere else, or they are American brands that have all their ingredients here or all their processing here. So if they're not labeled, either the made or the product, it's very difficult to tell. But somebody knows. That's the key to this. So who knows? They know. Write to them. Get on their website. They have these fabulous feedback things. I want to know, are Cheerios that I buy in Saskatchewan at my, local store, my independent, are they, what ingredients? Ask your grocery stores. That's their job. They know exactly who they're buying from. They shoot out an email. They'll find that information too, and ask them to label those controversial ones, or the ones that are hard for us as people who are shopping to figure out.
I'm speaking today with Colleen Wiseman, who is from Theodore, Saskatchewan, but she's a UBC professor now in food economics. And I know we've got a few people on the line. We'd love for you to join the conversation today, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Tell us if you've changed your shopping habits. Maybe you've got some hot tips to share with us. We'd love to hear about it. We've got Nadine on the line from Wandering Market, which is a local market in Moose Jaw. She's been listening. Nadine, hello.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks. I'm wondering what you think of this moment where people are really trying to pay attention to what they're buying, where it comes from, and what you're seeing at your store.
Well, of course, I think it's a great thing that people are being more conscious of where their foods are coming from. That's what we're all about here, as 99% of what we have in our store is not only Canadian, but grown here in Saskatchewan. And in terms of what we're seeing in our store, we've seen a little bit more support, but overall, it hasn't been like a big surge. And I think the reason for that is that our customers that come to us specifically understand the importance of consistently supporting local, so they haven't felt the need to rush in.
Interesting. What do you say to people who are worried that buying local will be expensive?
There's a number of ways that you can combat local food being more expensive. Buying things that are more at the end of the season and then preserving it through either fermentation, canning, or freezing. Also looking for bulk deals. We find that in our store, a lot of our bulk stuff, for example, like our bulk organic oats, are actually less than what you'll find at the grocery store. It isn't until you start having somebody put together foods for you that you're going to actually pay more, like with a pre-made lasagna or something like that. If you're making it at home, it's definitely going to be more cost effective.
Because you're not just feeding yourself. You've got a family to feed, right?
Yeah, we have 6 kids.
Oh, you have 6 kids. Okay.
Yeah.
So, how? I guess you're following your own advice there. I'm guessing. But how do you do it? How local is your diet?
Well, our diet is really local, and the thing that I do is I adopt a mindset of eating what's available. A lot of our mindset here is we go to the grocery store with our list, looking for what we want, rather than going and looking for what's available, what's most cost effective, and then purchasing and making our meals based on that.
So you try not, you do it the other way around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Nadine, I'm glad you called today. Thanks for joining the conversation.
Thanks for having me on.
That is Nadine from the Wandering Market in Moose Jaw. You can call us too, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. We've got Colleen Wiseman with us for the remainder of the show, all the way until 1 o'clock. She does know food and food processing, agriculture, all of that. So she can probably answer several of your questions. And in a moment, we will also hear from a representative with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business and what this moment has done for a lot of local businesses and the challenges that do still lie ahead. So we'll get to that in a bit. This is Blue Sky. Today we're talking about buying Canadian, and we've got a couple people wanting to share. So let's go to James in Saskatoon. Hello, James.
Hi, Alicia. Yes, I've been shopping for groceries for 50-some years or more. And what I do is I shop. I'm a member of the co-op in Saskatoon. I use Federated Co-op products, which are basically made either in Western Canada or nationally. For other things, I go to ethnic grocers. I find, and I find by buying olives from a Mediterranean grocer or buying products from an Eastern European grocer or from an Asian grocer, not only am I getting products that aren't made in the United States, but also I'm helping with international trade, because when we buy products from other countries, in return they buy raw materials or products from us, and so we have a trade. We have fair trade amongst them. I would like to see Canada get into more international things so that our range of international products is better. I miss the Smedley's meat pies from Great Britain, but because of some trade rules, you can't get them here anymore. It's too bad, because they're a really good product. But that's my take on grocery shop.
I like that, James. Thank you. You've given everyone a reason to go to the Ukrainian co-op later. That was James joining us. Well, he's in Saskatoon. Matthew, also in Saskatoon, writes an email. In the past, the Saskatoon co-op was really good at hiding American fresh bulk produce unless it was individually wrapped. I could presume it was from the USA. Since the trade war began, they seem much better at providing Canadian products to choose from. I'm shopping to avoid U.S. products, but have no problem buying from most of the rest of the world. And Donna writes, I just came home from grocery shopping at the Saskatoon Co-op. There is a sale and large display of Campbell's soup. I read the label, product of USA. Although mushroom soup was on my list, I set the soup can down. Then I was motivated to track down a manager. I asked that they put a sign on the display saying product of USA. So that's a good question for listeners. Are you putting back products that are made in the USA? Give us a call, 1-800-716-2221, or email bluesky@cbc.ca. Colleen, I'm wondering what kind of opportunity this presents for grocery stores. The large grocery chains, a number of them under fire in this last year. And so I don't know if they're trying to win back support, but what would you like to see from grocery stores right now?
Oh, I think it's an excellent opportunity for grocery stores, because they're the perfect people. They have us as consumers who are saying, what about this? And asking questions, just like you're listening to. Put a sign up, do these things. And they also have the other side of the supply chain. They know the food processors. Many food processors come right into the stores and talk to the buyers. So they have a direct line, or they have a connection into wholesalers. So they have that type of information. Perfect scenario. Hire one of those beautiful University of Saskatchewan smart students, get them some research on these fantastic, products that are there. Put some signs up. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be complicated, but just start putting those nice signs. This one is made in Canada. This is you may not want to say, don't buy these, but you can say where they're from, what the difference is. Put a few signs up that differentiate what made is versus produced and things like that. I think that it's a real good opportunity for them.
Okay.
On a related note, that I just one of your people that called in noted the difference between produce and food processing. I think that are like processed foods. I think that's going to be a challenge. I think in the sense that when it comes to products that are processed snack foods and things like this, and frozen foods and that. We have quite a few. I mean, we produce a lot. We, process, we make them available, everything from our hard bite potato chips to our, Western family, frozen products. So that's good. It's the produce section can be challenging for us, right? The citrus, the lettuce, all those particular areas. Those are ones that are very prominently connected to the United States. So again, it goes back to, as you and I mentioned, it's about priorities. If you are not buying US, well, then there are Mexico. I bought these beans yesterday, green beans. And I'm like, I can't buy them if they're US because I'm making that decision wholeheartedly. They're Mexico. That's great. I bought double because I'm supporting Mexico, hoping they'll support us too. So the produce section is one where we will likely need to make some trade-offs. But we got great options, right? We got apples. We have, tomatoes, our greenhouse tomatoes, our greenhouse cucumbers and peppers. We have beets, we have cabbage, we have, all those squash. So we have options. They're different than we used to always have in terms of the wide array, but maybe this is time to make some of those choices, at least until those fabulous farmer markets and, the community supported agriculture comes in on the prairies and elsewhere, right?
Yeah, a few months away, but it will happen eventually. The ground will melt and we'll have local produce available to us. You can give us a call today and tell us how, if your shopping habits have shifted, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. I'd like to invite someone else to the conversation. Brianna Solberg is Director, Legislative Affairs for the Canadian Federation of Independent Business for the Prairies and the North. And she joins us right now. Brianna, welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
As you're listening to this, I'm wondering what kind of an impact you think this can have. I know your members are worried about tariffs, but to see this swell of support for Canadian products, what do you think the impact of that can be?
Yeah, I think the Shop Local campaign that we're seeing right now does provide a glimmer of hope for many small businesses throughout this. As we know, this situation has created a lot of stress and fear. And we know during the pandemic that the Shop Local campaigning in many ways provided a lifeline, and it helped many small businesses survive that period. So they're hopeful. I think we are hearing from businesses who are trying to get more Canadian products on the shelf right now as people are threatening to boycott US products. But that comes at a bit of a cost, and a cost in terms of change, and also the cost of uncertainty. They're stocking up on all of these products right now, hoping that their consumers will purchase them. But to be honest, low consumer demand has already been identified month after month as the number one factor that's limiting small businesses' ability to grow and expand. And that's just because we haven't seen consumer spending jump back up to where it was pre-pandemic. So there's a lot of fear right now that even with all this buy local campaigning, it may not necessarily be enough to supplement the sales that these businesses would have been making to US customers, simply because there's just so many more Americans than there are.
Right. So many more individuals than there are American individuals than there are Canadian individuals.
Yes.
We've focused so much on food for the first part of the show, and I know that you represent members in all sorts of industries, but wondering if you can give some examples of how complicated this can get when you are trying to support local. You had an example, I think we talked about Amazon, and people might be cutting ties with some of those online online sources like Amazon, but there's Canadian businesses on there. So maybe just talk to me a bit, Brianna, about how complicated it can get.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of the situation is our two economies and our supply chains are just so intricately connected as it stands right now. As you said, we represent businesses from all sectors of the economy, and they're small to medium-sized businesses, many of which, as you mentioned, do sell their products on Amazon.ca. So if people are threatening to boycott Amazon just because it's a massive American company, then that's also bad news and will force businesses to pivot. So we also have a lot of agricultural members who are really concerned because obviously, as Canadians, we're really good at producing the raw inputs, the raw materials that we have adapted to ship across the border to the US, have them manufacture it for us, and then they sell it back to us as a finished product. So the reality is we have, let's say a poultry farmer here in Saskatchewan ships their meat across the border to a US pet food manufacturer who makes that into pet food and then sells it back to Canadian-owned pet stores. So you could see how all along the way, if a 25% tariff is slapped on that chicken when it crosses the border, the pet food becomes more expensive. And when it gets sold back to the Canadian pet store here, they have to pay a higher price for it. And it all becomes how much this cost can businesses eat before they have to pass it on to consumers, and will consumers be willing to pay for it at the end of the day?
The pet food example is an interesting one. What other examples do you have of just how tangled up we are with the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, we know right now that the reality is 2/3 of our GDP is dependent on our trade with the US, and only 1/3 of that GDP growth is based on interprovincial trade. So that's another thing right now. We've really been trying to push governments to focus on our own internal inefficiencies. Essentially, what this tariff threat has done is just shine a huge spotlight on the ways that our economy has fallen short for years. We've got way too much regulation, way too much of a tax burden, and the interprovincial trade barriers that exist to restrict the flow of goods across provincial borders are almost, in some ways, just as restrictive as international trade rules. And we've seen studies that indicate that these interprovincial barriers equate to about a 21% tariff on our own Canadian goods. And it's hurting our economy. It's hurting our productivity.
Okay, I want to ask you more about that because I don't know if I fully understand interprovincial trade barriers, because on one hand, they are protections for provinces that may want to protect particular industries. So maybe before we talk about breaking them down, I just want to understand like why they exist in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so obviously, as you said, they exist for a reason. Provinces have every right to want to protect their tax base. So they don't want to be losing sales or contracts or labor to other provinces. So they put restrictions or they have different requirements that products that come from out of province have to meet in order to be sold. A perfect example is alcohol. We know that the requirements for different alcohols as they cross provincial borders are extremely restrictive, and not to mention they're subject to markup. In most all provinces, an out-of-province alcoholic beverage will be subject to extreme markup. So a beverage producer in Saskatchewan might as well ship it across the border and pay the tariff on it, because if they ship it to Alberta or anywhere else that will accept it, they have to mark it up so significantly that it's at a disadvantage. Another example is meat standards. Earlier, we were talking about the CFIA, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. When food crosses a provincial border, it needs to be re-inspected, which is, it seems just silly that meat that's good enough to consume in Saskatchewan should surely be good enough to consume in Alberta if we're a true economic union. But that's just not the case right now. And a perfect example of this is the city of Lloydminster, which until just recently, within the city, food was required to be inspected twice when it crossed the provincial border. So they have an exception now, thankfully, but we hear from members just outside of Lloydminster who want to ship their food products across the Alberta border, and it needs to be inspected again by CFIA. So these barriers are hurting our productivity, our competitiveness, and they also make us more vulnerable to these external trade threats, because now internally we have nothing to rely on and fall back on for our GDP growth.
I want to allow Colleen to just jump in here. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on interprovincial trade barriers. Do you see reducing those barriers as a way through this difficult time for companies and producers?
It's definitely a long overdue scenario that we need to look at. Absolutely, no question. And it's true. I have read some of the same studies that Brianna has in terms of, the gains that can be made by streamlining even things like shipping, right? Those different elements, the size of the tires, the licenses, how many hours you can work in a day, for sure. So there's streamlining, but we still have to keep in mind that it's not going to offset, because we still have the same, population base, right? We got with the US, if we were looking at shipping to them, 10 times the population. And the other thing to think about is that huge, long country that we love, but is very far in terms of shipping. If you're producing in Saskatchewan and you're shipping to Toronto, if you're in Vancouver and you're shipping, to Halifax, that's a long ways to ship. So the cost of that, even if you have streamlined barriers, will make it easier. But that's why we ship to the US, right? Because Seattle is close, Michigan is close, right? Those elements. So it will certainly offset. Absolutely an excellent way to move forward to it. And why not have that streamlining so that we can gain that, 15, 20% in terms of sort of cross, Canada associated with it. So I think that it's an important step in the absolute right direction.
I'll come back to both of you, Brianna and Colleen, in a moment. I just want to bring in some callers to the conversation. So Don in Moose Jaw is on the line. Hi, Don.
Hi. Yeah, it's obviously a good and critical discussion given the timing of things. I just wanted to add the dimension that you touched on with the wandering market here, because I've long been a promoter of local production. And just to add to what was already said, the wandering market is not just a local, but it's a provincial, regional supporter. They take orders online and ship to Regina, Saskatoon, and Swift Current, as well as Moose Jaw. And they have about 200 suppliers within the region here. So it's a good model, and one that we could build on as a protection against the kind of disruption that is now being introduced by the United States and our reliance on that market. It's creating chaos, and there's going to be very serious consequences, and we have to pull together and do what we can to strengthen alternative markets locally and within the country.
Don, thanks for calling. I appreciate you making that point. Thanks, Don.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go now to Rhonda in Regina. Hi, Rhonda.
Hello, Alicia. Excuse me. I want to talk about a cleaning lotion that I've used for years now, and I'll bring it up because it touches a number of points. One is that it's made in Quebec. The other is that it's completely environmentally friendly, which is important to me. And it really is an all-purpose cleaning lotion. You can use it to wash floors, clean your tub, and do dishwashing. I don't have a dishwasher because I'm in an apartment. And for certain purposes, I've found that I can dilute it. Get my own bottle, do half of the cleaning lotion and half water, and dilute it that way. And yes, it is more expensive than, say, picking up Tide or so in the grocery store. Excuse me, sorry. Excuse me. But it goes a long way, and again, you get the satisfaction of its environmental friendliness, and again, the idea of supporting local in that sense, or Canadian, I guess, in that sense. And I find it at Old Fashioned Foods. It's called Nature Clean, all-purpose cleaning lotion. I've also picked up toilet cleaning strips from that company, and so yeah, I want to point that out, particularly because, as I say, Canadian and environmental, and you can make it last if you're judicious with how you use it.
I'm guessing it will be flying off the shelves now that you called, Rhonda, and told us that. Thanks so much for joining the conversation.
Because that's something I wanted to point out to you, Alicia, just quickly, is something I learned some years ago when I got connected with a wellness company, was that after the Second World War, when certain chemicals were developed, they then were used for things like, laundry detergents and things like that, because the chemicals were cheap. And so, but of course the downside is then all of that goes down your drain and out into the environment. So that's the other aspect of this, which makes my hackles rise when I watch TV and Tide ads come on.
Yeah, and I think all of this is making people just pause and think a bit. So, Rhonda, thanks for calling. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Okay, bye now.
Bye. We'll go to one more caller. Kathy in Regina joins us right now. Hi, Kathy.
Hello, folks. It's an interesting conversation this afternoon. I want to go back half a step. I believe it's Rob in Saskatoon who is referencing using international stores for some pricing. And I've had great success buying spice at those places, and certainly fresher and very different volumes. But I'm speaking about other things too. I think it's very helpful for those of us who tend to be of the WASP community to venture into those places. The people that operate them are very often from international backgrounds, and they appreciate A, seeing us, but B, having conversations with us. And it's good for us, and it's good for them. And it helps people kind of fit more comfortably into a community in a longer way. Having said that, there's also another side of things that, it's maybe me more in internet issues, but I get very annoyed as a food educator particularly, hearing and listening to younger folk that think that the only way that you can eat food is fresh. And I find it particularly galling when international people come here and think that they should be only purchasing fresh food. A, it becomes more expensive when it comes from international sources. I probably don't have to speak much more about that now. But know that food is safe, that does come from Canada, but maybe we don't need to receive grapefruit from South Africa right now, or grapes from Peru. There is other food that is available, but for younger people to learn that fresh food is not the only way, that we should be looking and using our resources regarding frozen food.
Frozen is just as good. Yeah, Kathy, good point. Thanks for calling today. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye. That was Kathy joining us today. You can give us a quick call, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Clearly, there are a lot of things to talk about, and this is top of mind for a lot of folks. So Robert writes, a few products have no country of origin. For example, when the can of soup says packaged for Federated Co-op, what does that tell us about country of origin? Oh, I wonder, Colleen, do you know much about that? Packaged for Federated Co-op. Like, I know that Co-op does a lot of processing locally, but maybe you could elaborate on that.
Right. So that's actually that third category. That's that category where it's not the made, it's not the produced. Honestly, it can mean many things. You can't take it as it is, besides the fact that, yes, Federated Co-op did it. The only thing you could do is ask Federated Co-op to ask them to do it, because it could be nothing and just packaged, and they said, we really need this type of soup that has lower salt or higher salt, because that's who our customers, what our customers prefer, or it could be that. So it's not regulated, it's not quantified. You really can't say much about sourcing in that particular one.
Brianna, I know we talked to you about reducing interprovincial trade barriers, and the show today really is about how individuals can use their money to send a message. And so I'm wondering what message you'd like to leave with people who are trying to help businesses through this really uncertain and difficult time. What would you like to see from people, Brianna?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I think the Shop Local campaign does provide so much hope to small businesses who, they just came off the heels of the pandemic. And in many ways, the Shop Local campaign did help them survive that time. And we know that CFIB has done some research on the impact of shopping local, and 66 cents of every dollar that is spent at a local small business will stay in your local community. That means it gets recirculated through local taxes, hiring of local employees, sponsoring local charities or sports teams. And that's opposed to only 11 cents of every dollar that stays in the community when you shop at a multinational retail chain. And so the impact really is quite significant to help, not just keep those businesses in our community alive, but to help our communities thrive.
I want to squeeze in one more caller. So Meryl in Osler is on the line. Hi, Meryl.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm well, thanks. What are your thoughts today?
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on something that one of your experts said, is that we have so much of the raw materials, right? And we have shipped so much to the U.S. to kind of do the manufacturing and to be that middleman. But I think we are in a power position. they don't have the raw materials. We do. We now need to, as a country, come up with the infrastructure to be our own middleman, essentially, which is going to create jobs. So, yeah, that's just something I wanted to add to the conversation or highlight.
Yeah, Meryl, thanks. I'll put that to Colleen. Appreciate that. That was Meryl in Osler. Colleen? We have the power. We've got the stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we have part of the power.
Yeah.
It's very similar to the gentleman who spoke about, opening up more, local shops for produce and these. Absolutely, we do have the power. But remember, we're still a small company and a small, or a small country in that sense. So, for example, yes, I might be, producing grains, or I might be producing, certain type of product. And I say, well, why can't I take my durum wheat, or a group of us do a durum wheat and turn it into pasta? But the problem is that then we still need the market. Absolutely, we can do it, but we need the market to serve. The Canadian market is not going to support that. So we need to have an export market. So that means we have to establish new markets, whether they be in the EU or Asia, different places, because we need that critical mass to make it profitable. Because of course, the people who, even though we are producing it, in terms of fundamental, production, they need to make money. We can't say, okay, it's just temporary, you make less profit. They need to make that profit to make it worth their while, and we need to too. So just like the grocery stores, it's wonderful that there is, grocery stores that are being supplied and providing, consumers with choices. But there might only be room for one, maybe two grocery stores in smaller centers, because that's just the nature in terms of allowing that company and the people who supply to them to provide profit. So it is a supply chain issue, but it's also a customer issue. Get a lot of customers? Yes, you can start doing that.
It's complicated. Well, this has been great. It's been fun, even though it's complicated. So Colleen and Brianna, thanks so much for being our guests today. Brianna, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And Colleen, thanks to you too.
You're very welcome. And a shout out the fact that I'm not just from Theodore, but my degrees are from the University of Saskatchewan. Commerce degree, agriculture economics. It's the best university, no question.
Thanks for saying that, Colleen. I also just want to point out to people that we do have buy local Facebook groups in both Saskatoon and Regina, and people can post what they're looking for locally and crowdsource and answer. So that's always a good tool as well. Today on the show, you heard from Colleen Wiseman, U of S grad from Theodore, Saskatchewan, now a UBC professor, and Brianna Solberg is with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business.